So for our Icelandic environment, I'm going to use Megascans. And I'm using Quixel Bridge to import these into Houdini. Now it's very easy. Once you install Quixel Bridge, you can download the Houdini plugin. And when you open Houdini, there's a Quixel Megascans button here. And you click that, and then you click on the Megascans live link. And then you choose your render engine, and I'm going to use Mantra. And we'll say Principal Shader. And we can apply material to selection. So this is fine. So we'll just drag this to the side. But now we know that our link is working. And when we go back to Bridge, we'll just look for Icelandic assets. And there's a whole bunch to browse through. And how a Megascans basically works is you have to get a monthly subscription, which you can cancel anytime, I believe. And then each month you get a number of points, which you can use to download these assets. So most 3D objects are 4 points, and then the textures are 2 points. So I already downloaded a couple of Icelandic assets. So for instance, this one, and then a couple of Icelandic textures, and these kind of rocks. And this is the rock we're gonna use for our RDB, rigid body simulation. And then this is other stuff. So what we'll do is we'll select an asset. And there's the asset info. We have our download settings. So the settings you use when you download the asset. And these are different from the export settings. So these are the settings that will export to Houdini. And in here we can change our texture resolution, the texture format, the mesh format, and the mesh LOD. LOD stands for level of detail, and this basically says how detailed the mesh of the asset is. LOD 0 is the highest detail, and then LOD 5 is the lowest detail. So we'll switch between 0 and 3, and we'll use 0 for our up close assets, and we'll use the LOD 3 for assets in the distance when we don't even get to see the detail anyway. So for the up close ones, I'll do 8K resolution textures, and for the LOD 3, I will choose the 4K one. Okay, so let's start by exporting a high level of detail one. We'll do 8K, we'll export this to Houdini. Now, if you haven't installed the plugin for Houdini yet, you will get a button here to do so, and it will install automatically. And we'll say export. It will say exporting. And once it's done, it will say exported successfully. So when we go to Houdini, we can see that the Icelandic rock has been placed in our scene. Okay, so while I was recording this tutorial, this course, Quixel released an update for their Megascan Bridge software. So inside Bridge, nothing really changed. As you can see, the settings are still the same. However, inside Houdini, where there was the Megascans live link before, we now have Megascans plugin. And inside here, you have kind of the same settings, but also these settings are all new. So we choose our renderer, Mantra, material type, Principal Shader. And then inside here, there's a new cool option called Enable Level of Details. And with this checked, we can now select our LODs inside Houdini, so we don't have to pre-select them inside Bridge. So that's a cool new function. You can also now check the apply motion for plants. So when you import plant-like models, they would look like they are affected by wind. We're not going to import plants, so we'll leave this unchecked. And there's another one, the Megascans scattering. So before, you always had the option inside Houdini to say, I want to scatter this object. And now you have to select this one if you want to have the option, because if you don't select it, you are not able to scatter the object. So I want to scatter some rocks later, so I'll just leave this on for everything. And then we can move this, this is fine, the rest, so we can move this to the side. And maybe they also added the function that you can now finally minimize it completely. Before on the live link it would always stay on screen, but now it works fine. And if we go to bridge, we can just select our high level detail. So LOD 0, 8K resolution textures, and we'll say export. Export successfully. So now it does scatter it for us, but we can easily make it that it doesn't scatter. So it goes to our asset material, I don't know why, but let's go to our object level. So here's our Icelandic rock assembly. If you go inside, you have the scatter setup here. So this is now turned on, but we don't want to scatter this, so we'll just turn it off, and it's an easy way. So you still have the option if you want to scatter this, but we're not going to. So inside here you have your geo and your material. And inside our geo we can now select which level of detail we want. So if we zoom in on this object, you can see the mesh. And inside this switch node, here we can switch between our LODs. So as you can see, input 0 is LOD 0, and this would go up to 5. I don't know where there's more, but you can see the mesh changes. So this is our highest detail, and then it kind of degrades to LOD 5. So this would be our lowest mesh resolution. And as I said before, I would like to use 3 for objects that are further in the background. So this is still looking pretty good. And I would like to use the photorealistic one, so LOD 0 for objects up close. Okay, so this is how we import our Megascan assets. And we can now easily just place this in our scene. Let me select our camera. And we'll scrub through. And now we can just select our object, select our handle, and we can move it around. So we can rotate it, we can move it up and down. We can also move it in here, and we can scale it. Whoops. We can scale it. And we'll just give it a nice place for now. So I'll just put it here. I'm switching between camera view, perspective view, and my handle view with the spacebar. Okay, like this. And now let's import some more assets. So I'll go back to bridge. I want this one, so I'll just do the lot 0 8K. So export. And I would also like to use this one, export. And let's also do our ground plane. So if we look in here, oh, it's loading. Okay, so it's done loading. So I found a downside of selecting the use Megascan scattering, because it takes a lot longer to load now because it's scattering all the objects we import. So you can just turn this one off and then only turn it on when you want to import an object that you want to use the Megascan scattering for. So let's do that. So I will turn this off now, minimize. And if I delete these, just to show it works, I will re-export this one and this one. Yes. Oh yeah, so now it already loaded, so this is a lot quicker. I'm gonna hide these for now because what I wanted to do was change the material on our ground plane. So how this used to work with Megascans, I don't know if it still works, but you select your object that you want to apply the material to. So I will select my ground plane. And if I then go into bridge and select the texture that I would like to use. So I have these Icelandic sand textures. So let's say I want to use the Icelandic sandy gravel. I want a high resolution, 8K, JPEG, export to Houdini. Successful. So this will put me in the material section, but it didn't apply it to my ground plane. So I think this is a bug with the new update, because this used to work. So now we have to manually select ground plane, go to render, material, and we'll select in material. We'll select the Icelandic sandy gravel that we just imported. And there we go. Okay, so there's our ground plane material. Okay, so I noticed that moving around with this material applied to my ground plane, that my computer is getting pretty slow. So I'm just going to delete this for now. We know it's there, but I just want to have the speed when I'm placing these rocks all over the scene. So I'm gonna get these two back, and whoops, I'll place them somewhere real quick. So let's see about this little guy. Let's place him over here. And the big one we'll place in the back. Okay, so these are just temporary places. What I'd like to do next is I'd like to add some animation to the camera and also add an environment light. And when we've set up our camera and lights, I will use these three rocks here to dress our Icelandic scene. I will scale them, rotate them, and place them all over the place, so it looks like we have all kinds of different rocks.